Welcome back, everyone, to Performing the World, Creating the Power. Give yourselves a Zoom round of applause for being here. Nice. I can hear those loud claps. I feel like my ears are thundering right now. It's amazing. We've had an amazing day thus far. We had a great opening session with some wise words from our very own Lois Holtzman and Dan Friedman, as well as our amazing IOC International Organizing Committee. And then we went musical. Has Playing for Change shared a lot of what they're doing in the work, amazing work they're doing around the world globally. We then went on to perform our future. Our futures are very amazing. We have a lot of curiosity about our futures. And Ben, Tiffany, and Gwen and the rest of team did an amazing presentation. Disaster. Disaster is something you cannot predict, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's something that happens in your personal life. But something you can do in disaster is create the power. How do you create that power in the face of disaster? Today we have two very great presenters. We're going to come on here and speak about that. Introduce you to the Performing the World, Creating the Power stage, none other than Jim Martinez and Farzana Gandhi, creating the power in the face of disaster. Give them a Zoom round of applause.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Oh my Farzana, these are like all my friends. Like they're all in one
Fantastic.
place.
I'm so happy they're my friends too now.
Yeah, they're your friends too. That's the whole purpose here is make more friends. So happy to see you all. And we're so glad to be here with you talking about the things that we will be talking about. We do have a slide presentation for you that helps me figure out what I'm going to say next. So welcome to Creating the Power in the Face of Disaster. My name is Jim Martinez, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm presenting today with my partner and collaborator in the university and in a small startup business, Farzana Gandhi. We hope that you will enjoy what we create together today, and hopefully it'll be useful in creating some power. And so this is the general flow for today. We're going to have an introduction, who we are and what we're doing, and then a workshop activity for about 10 minutes where you go into breakout rooms and do a little performing. And then some of the key ideas that we want to leave you with are kind of, we all have these common experiences of no matter where we are in the world of feeling helpless in a climate disaster. And then there's always this media circus and this overwhelming sense of fear that gets created somehow. And we'd like to be contrary to that and create some power out of those feelings of powerlessness. So let's just get right to it.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim. I'm so excited to be here and to get started. So maybe we can start by introducing ourselves. Jim, you want to take it away?
So I'm a professor of interdisciplinary studies at New York Institute of Technology. That means that I get to teach things like data science and sustainable economic development as courses to undergraduates. And I am also a teacher trainer. And so my PhD is in urban education. And I have a bunch of years of training New York City public school teachers. I am also the co-founder of Collective Infrastructures with Farzana.
Perfect. And these are some amazing pictures of some of the initiatives that Jim has been working on. Jim, do you want to say a couple words?
Yeah. So on the left-hand side is a picture of undergraduate students at an NYIT doing a panel discussion. It's their performance of a panel discussion of a project that we did in New York City schools. I sent them in to do STEM education learning with the teachers in a public elementary school. I've written about that in one of my books, and so you can read about that. On the right-hand side is a bunch of children in Nicaragua. I traveled to Nicaragua with more undergraduate students, and I did a science lesson there, and we hosted a week long of activities in STEM and play environments. So that's just some of what I've done. And those projects led to 6 years of being busy doing STEM education projects in elementary schools until, I met Farzana, and my world changed because we had some disasters and I wanted to do something about disasters. So Farzana?
So funny enough, right? What is a STEM educator, expert, and interdisciplinary education, specialist doing with an architect and an urban designer? So that's the kind of fun we have. We have a great time together. I'm Farzana Gandhi. I'm really glad to meet you all. I'm also co-founder of Collective Infrastructures, a little startup that Jim and I have started. We'll tell you a little bit about it at the end. But I am trained as an architect and an urban designer. I have a practice, Farzana Gandhi Design Studio, that focuses predominantly on working with vulnerable populations here in New York. We're in New York in the USA, but also really all around the world. And I've been focusing predominantly on environmentally and socially conscious solutions that work from the bottom up. I'm also a professor at NYIT, at the New York Institute of Technology, where I work with students and I teach them some of these practices of working with communities. So these are just a selection of images from my work in the profession. And what you can see is that, really we can do so much powerful, good work if we actually just listen to stakeholders on the ground and work with communities instead of working in a way that puts communities in a position of powerlessness. And so what we're here to do is to continue to cultivate that within this session in a way where we are speaking directly to the communities, to everybody in the world, and kind of, suggesting possibilities of how you may work with professionals like myself or any relief aid workers that show up that may have other ideas and don't necessarily practice in this way. So what happens in a disaster? We've all suffered through multiple disasters, unfortunately, these days, probably firsthand, natural disasters that, may have affected our communities, but also, of course, the pandemic, right? We have shared experiences. And typically, a disaster cycle is one that starts with a relief stage, followed by reconstruction, and then followed by resilience. And each phase really involves different conversations with different people. Just to give you a sense of what these three phases are, relief focuses on the immediate needs of the crisis. Getting food, water, energy, communication, sanitation, transportation back up online, aid delivery, and having temporary shelter and first aid and mental health support for people on the ground. That's usually a period of time that's fairly short, and sometimes up to 3-4 months, followed by reconstruction when the kind of funding streams kick in. And you have capital projects that focus on hard infrastructures, repairing all of the power lines and sewer lines and communication lines and bridges and offices and buildings that have, in theory, broken down. Resilience is in some ways the most important. It's where we start to think about how to prevent future disasters from affecting our communities in ways that we may have suffered in the past. And a lot of that comes from building community capacity through education and training. And I would argue a lot of that happens, right at the relief stage. And so what we're doing here is starting to focus on the relief stage in this workshop and starting to have conversations that help train us and build capacity from the very start. Why wait until the disaster has occurred? But we can actually start to think about, the next one and prepare ourselves in a way to have those conversations. So Jim, these disasters are really complex, right? So there's a ton of people show up. It's super overwhelming. Not only are we suffering from the trauma of the disaster itself and the lack of resources we may find on the ground, but people show up and it's complicated, right? And so how do we start?
Well, we have to have a conversation at some point. We have to talk to someone, right? And so That's the challenge, is that when we are in these situations, we are maybe, I wouldn't say not ourselves, but our capacity to respond to what's going on may be compromised, right? And so part of it is being mindful about kind of where we are and what we think we need and who is there with us. So I think that in a lot of ways, um, working with what is in front of you is kind of paramount. And so that's how I see improvisation and performance as being really useful. What's in front of you is a disaster. And that's kind of where you have to start.
And those needs could be anything from the need for energy or transportation lines being back up and running, or even food. But what we see is, actually, if you start participating in the conversation a little differently and being an active participant rather than a passive one, you can really generate new possibilities. And that's what we're here to do today.
So when we were imagining what we were doing for this workshop, and we got with Lois and Dan, we landed on creating a role play activity. And so as Farzana and I were creating this role play activity, kind of the little light went off in my head that it's like, oh, this is going to work, because a light just went off in my head as we're creating this activity. So I'm hoping that as you create your activities based on this example that we're modeling for you, that we're going to come back out of the workshop with all these little lights that have gone on all over the world. So
Absolutely.
we're going to perform this script for you, and then we'll model kind of redoing the script. So we're going to go into this as if we're just ordinary people reacting.
Yep.
I will be the local community leader, and Farzana is the external aid worker.
Perfect. Take it away.
Show us where the water is. We need some water.
I mean, everybody needs water. I have 500 gallons and I need to distribute it to 5 different communities. Can you tell me exactly how much water your community needs?
I don't know how much. Just show me where the water is, where we can go get what we need.
I can't show you where the water. No, I need to ration these supplies. I have instructions from my supervisor. And besides, you'll just be greedy and take more than you need.
What? End of scene. It doesn't get better from here. We actually played this scene out a little bit longer, and it gets a little contentious for lots and lots of reasons. And so what I realized looking back at this is that at some point we stopped listening to each other. So we're going to play this scene again and try to be better listeners and get rid of the constraints, because we're both coming to this conversation with constraints. And so we're trying to create a different performance. So
Great.
here I go. Show us where the water is. We need water.
I can't tell you where the water is. I have 500 gallons and I need to distribute it to 5 different communities. Those are the instructions my supervisor has given me. How much water do you specifically need?
I don't know how much water I need. Can you help me? Can you help me figure that out?
I have no data from your community. You just have to tell me, do you need 25 gallons, 40 gallons? Because I have to divvy that up between 5 different communities.
Well, what if you give me what you can give me right now? And if I need more, will you tell me where you're going to be so I can send someone to get some more?
You're going to send volunteers to help me do my job?
Yeah.
I mean, we need people. Do you have trucks?
We got trucks.
Because the water's about 10 miles away, and I only have 1 truck, and that's why I only have 500 gallons. But if we could get more trucks.
If you promise me that we will get the water that we need, I will get you what you need to distribute this water every place else.
All right. Oh, let's do this.
Great. End the scene. So that is how we're modeling this example script. When you create your scenes, you can do something else. Let's go to one more example.
Yep.
it doesn't matter what the disaster is. We've all been in there. So play around with your own experience. I'll be the local community leader again. Hey, the road is blocked and there's down trees, and we need to get these folks back here to the hospital. When is this road going to be clear?
I'm sorry, you just have to wait. As soon as I have more information, I'll share it with you.
Okay, let's be a little bit creative here. I got like four guys in three pickup trucks back here. How can we help you?
Wait, you're offering to help? Because about 50 people have asked me the same question this morning. I don't have any information. You're gonna help?
Yeah, we just need to get this done.
Well, actually, I'm waiting for the pickup truck to show up for the tree. If you already have one right here, where is it? Let's get this tree out of the way. We gotta get these kids, these people to the hospital.
We'll make a quick call. Those trucks will be here in 2 minutes, and we're gonna get moving through. Thank you. End of scene. So that's kind of we sort of continued on in that one from a difficult conversation to a more creative conversation without replaying it from the top. But again, you get to sort of create your own adventure here. These are just some suggestions. In order to prompt you and to keep you being creative, we've got some directions for you to use when you go into the workshops. Create your own scripts. For those of you who are in viewing parties, you can pair up and create your own scripts on the fly like Farzana and I did. And then do it first as kind of like this very difficult conversation, like the kinds we normally have, and then replay it to see if you can approach those constraints in a very different way. And be free to be as creative as you want. This is not about what's practical. This is about what is possible. And then we'd like you to prepare to share out your scenes, really your impressions of what happened, your reflections on what happened rather than the actual text of your scene, unless you don't get to play in a particular breakout room that we're going to put you in. And then the suggestion would be write your own scene and then sort of put it into the chat.
Yep. So we recognize that, we have over 40 participants, so we may not have enough time for everybody to role play. If you find yourself being creative and not having a chance to verbalize your script, write it up and put it in your breakout room chat. And so we can offer you some feedback as we move through room to room. The context of the scene, right, is that we're in the relief stage in the aftermath of disaster. It's absolute chaos, and everybody's operating in their own little silos. The healthcare workers are there doing their thing. Relief aid workers are doing their thing. Nobody knows how to communicate with anybody, especially with the community. And nobody that's come in is necessarily local and has no knowledge of the actual needs of your community. And so that's kind of the setup. We have a few more prompts in case you are in need of them, but one could be that there's a large population of elderly in the community and there's an evacuation order, and how do we do that? Because no one thinks that through. And another is that the electricity is out and there's a heat wave, right? Or it's winter and it's below freezing. And we can kind of think about all the challenges that might ensue from that. Or no water, right? And so these are just some possible prompts. You're free to take your own. And that's about it.
Yeah, if we can go back to gallery mode for a moment, and if there are any questions about kind of what we're asking you to play at, now would be the time. Otherwise, we'll break you out into breakout rooms where you can go play and take turns performing your scenes. And I have so many friends who are experts at performing these scenes. I'm sure they'll all go wonderfully.
Jim, can you drop those prompts into the chat so if people can see them when they're in the rooms?
Yep.
I'm doing that right now.
Jan.
Jim, the local aid, the external aid workers, are they directed by the government? Are they nonprofit groups that are coming in? Like, what's your sense of that?
Any and all of the above.
Okay, could be any.
Yeah.
You can define the two people that are talking, right? So they
Great.
could be a professional, it could be a professional engineer or an architect showing up, and it could be anybody. It could be a healthcare worker, it could be mental health aid worker. So
Any other questions? You
So
all
as we
ready?
said, you know, you'll do a few rounds of these amongst the group within the breakout room. Those that won't be able to participate can write out scripts. And Jim and I will float through these rooms, and we will reconvene in about 10 to 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and then talk as a larger group. We have a few raised hands.
We got
Jim?
Carolyn and then Gwen. Carolyn?
She just answered my question. Is how long? 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Gwen?
you'll get a warning on the breakout room when it's deciding to close on you.
When you said we'll do these scenes, I wasn't sure if you're saying we'll do a few different scenes in each of our breakout rooms, or the scenes were that there were going to be a bunch of breakout rooms.
You'll do so if you're in breakout rooms, take turns doing scenes together.
So
Different scenes.
we'll choose different scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And appoint one or two people to kind of be spokespeople that can kind of do a share out of some of the main takeaways from all of this when we reconvene. Okay.
We're good?
One more question, sorry.
Yes.
Did you want us to do a bad scene first,
Yes.
like you
Do
did?
the-
You do.
The
Okay.
highly constrained scene first, and then go do the more performed scene after that.
Okay, thank you.
And you know, think deeply into your own experiences. We've all faced these kind of miscommunications with people. And so, you know, you don't have to make it up. You can actually play out something you've actually experienced or witnessed.
All right, I think if there are no other questions, we're good, and I'll ask our wonderful VJs to create the breakout rooms, and we'll see you in a little bit.
Scene for group 4.
We were getting somewhere. It was great.
It was fun.
That was fast.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome, welcome. Some really fun conversations are being had. And we're sorry to cut it short.
Okay, so how did that go?
Yeah, it was a lot of it was exciting.
What was exciting?
You know, because you really felt like you were in some type of it. You know, once you started with the role play, it really felt like you were in a crisis. Like this really had to be done. It wasn't, you know, you knew you were role playing, but at the same time, the adrenaline kind of got going.
That's great. It sounds like it felt authentic.
It did. It did.
I loved in your prep and in the experience that in some ways it felt like the direction we had was take more collective responsibility. And that was it turned out to be fairly doable as soon as you saw it from that perspective. It was really interesting. And also, it was also just a lot of fun to do that with a new grouping of people.
Thank you. Who else?
Well, it was very interesting in their example, Carrie, just to build on what you're saying, and then in the one that in my breakout room, how I don't know how to say this. For the worker, not the community member, it was not. It was disarming to be offered help, but
Yeah.
it wasn't threatening. Which often
Yeah.
you would think you could have said we can help or whatever in a way that
Right.
was threatening to their position and their authority, but
Yeah.
in both cases it wasn't at all. It was
Yeah.
but it was disarming.
Yeah, it was part of why I wrote at the end of our scene before we were rudely pulled back into the big room. I was saying to Mika, who was playing, if you will, the person in need of help, that at some point she said this great line in the second scene of, "I'm so frightened, I don't think I can decide what to do next." And I was thinking, Mika, that it would have been fine to say, "Can you tell me, I need some direction. Can you tell me what to do?" In line with what Lois is saying, like that would have been a really lovely offer, I think, to an aid worker.
So just
Yeah,
to,
that's such a good
yeah,
point.
go ahead.
That in fear, in crisis, the most helpful thing I could think of to do was to ask, what should I do?
Yeah.
And to say I was afraid.
Yeah.
So I didn't experience my group asking what help I needed. But what did happen was because I said, you can't go anywhere because my boss told me so. And then we were doing an evacuation. And then Denise was able to say, well, let me call the other bosses. And I'm like, which other bosses? There's a way I wanted to have a fight. And then I was like, what do I want to have a fight for? I'm in a crisis. I'll check my people, you check your people. So even the decision to go and do something other than butt up against me was helpful. Even though the words of like, what do you need weren't there. Like, it was just helpful. I was like, I don't need to go. Like, we're all trying to get out of here. So just.
Yeah. On that note, in our first scene, we seem to come up against bureaucracy where they wanted to know your name, they wanted to know how you spell it, what's the exact location, and at the end, it said we get back to you in an hour. And our person said, well, we'll be dead by then. So in the second scene, it was interesting how we kind of corrected, we played off of, the mistake of the bureaucracy. I think we could plainly see what needed to be done. Get around that, to get the quickest service that we needed.
I think for us, that in the first scene, there was that wall of expectation of who the official was and where the information was going to come from, with no real, leniency in terms of maybe somebody else has the answer. And then in our second reenactment of the crises, which was evacuating the seniors, what really happened is that it was allowed to listen to the other voices in the room, the people that were actually being affected, and to have a belief in their experience and their ability to help. And so everybody kind of came together, like, a lot of people, you can call them, and we know people who can help, and to come together with a plan to get the people evacuated and moved. Also seeing that one of the other things that was that it became apparent that other people would think of obstacles that maybe the official person hadn't thought about, like trees in the road or something.
Yeah, it felt to me as in that room too with Denise, and that we were kind of panicked in the first scene. Smoke, it was a fire scene, and smoke was beginning to come, and so, but in the second scene, we people sort of calmed down and went to work, and Denise played a very important role of giving a real concrete and practical suggestion of calling people that we all knew to help evacuate these seniors. So anyway, that was it. It really transformed the scene from being a panic, everybody in the panic state, to kind of working together. It was good.
These are great comments. I want to build on a few more, and I know that there are a few more raised hands, but I wanted to suggest, what's interesting about the conversations you guys were having was that it started to highlight that the aid worker or the official actually doesn't know any more than you do, right? So they're usually just as powerless because they've got some instructions going on from people that are above them, and they don't have the answers, but they put up a front that they are an authority and you are a person that's a victim, right? But to turn that on its head allows you to actually participate in the activity, and it reveals that they actually need help too.
Yeah.
We have some raised hands. Just go ahead and talk.
I can't actually see where the raised hands are, so I'm sorry if I'm talking
No,
over
you're
somebody
the
else.
only one with a
No.
raised hand at the moment.
Yeah, I'm also sorry if I'm repeating something because I lost internet connection and rejoined, so I don't know if this was already said, but one of the things that really came through for me, and which was just touched on now, was this notion of expertise kind of falling to pieces in the midst of catastrophe. And even at the best of times, the notion of expertise being severely limited. But the thing that really came to me when I was improvising the scene with my partner was, so in my own life, I struggle a lot with anxiety, and sometimes my response to that anxiety is very dissociative, and I literally just, I cannot make any decisions. I can be a body that's doing things, but I cannot be using my cognitive capacities very effectively. And so even in the context of improvising that scene, I reached a moment where I was like, actually, I can tell this person that. I can tell them that I'm not capable of making a decision right now. That if they make a decision, I can carry it out, but I can't actually decide. And it just really helped me to feel like there's so much power in those interactions, naming not just the logistics of what you're trying to organize, but that there's another thing that's happening for me, and that is that I am finding it extremely stressful trying to think in this. And so can I outsource some of that thinking to you so I can be more useful? So naming some of what else was going on felt like a very helpful turn in the conversation.
You're speaking to something I think probably quite a few of us felt. And if you hadn't said it, I wouldn't have been aware of that. But the way I experienced it was once someone emerged with some leadership, because of the direction we were given, we supported it. But I was just like, what the fuck? Like, but I think it wasn't like questioning, does that person have the right idea at all? It's just that we knew we needed to create some kind of a collective experience, and we did. And then I had something to do, right? Then I could do something, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about officials. When officials address these disasters, they probably have a script that they're supposed to go by. First you do this, first you do that. And I think that if you get locked into that and not have room to improvise, you can be totally irrelevant to what people are saying. So it kind of leaves you in a place where you're not really listening to the people. You're just going, you're responding to what you're supposed to do according to the manual, so to speak. And sometimes the manual is not good enough to respond to the specific issue that's going on. And we correct that in the second scene.
Just to build off of what Alan's saying, I also had the experience that there's a script that victims have too.
Yep.
And that I'm somebody who doesn't spent most of my life trying not to be a victim. And in these situations, even in the playing of them, I felt strongly like you could be outraged that this person, like in the scene you played, Jim, it was fine to be outraged that the person wasn't bringing you the water. And I just realized how much there's a script to the other side of it as well. And that how I know that in certain situations, service situations, things like that, but in an emergency, when you're scared, playing out that victim script, I think is very, very easy to do. And so I just found it very interesting that both people had to break out of their character in a certain way in their identity in those scenes.
Yes, and Carrie, I remember when I first played that with Farzana, she surprised me with, we can't give it to you because you're greedy. And I was like, what? I nearly lost my mind, right? And so there's a way that was the transformation moment for me. It was like, oh, I get it now. One of the things that I did in preparing for this is that I got curious and I said, are aid workers using improv in their training? Because the plan never goes according to plan and the situation's never the same as the one you trained in. And the answer to that actually is yes, in some places, pretty spotty, and probably a lot of work to do in that. But, aid workers using improv and ordinary people using improv could work a long ways towards improving kind of what happens on the ground.
Yep. Absolutely. One of the things that I saw, I think it was group 3, with the going door to door in a building to evacuate people. And the community person said, actually, I know in apartment this B, 3B, there's this person. In 6A, there's a elderly person that has mobility issues. That data is gold. Right? Because aid workers and people coming in don't have data on the ground. If nothing at all, if you don't have any resources, you don't have a truck, you don't have, those kinds of things, you have knowledge. And that's really, really powerful because, people coming from the outside are operating on data and statistics that have nothing to do with actual, what's happening on the ground that day. And so I think that's a really huge takeaway. And the other thing is, as you guys started to improv, it was really clear that you realized how much strength and resilience you all have to actually be participatory and to be able to help and not become the victim, right? And so we need to kind of hone in on that strength and build on that. So, Jim, do you have anything to add? And then maybe we can close out with some slides.
Nothing more to add. That was well said. Thank you all so much for the discussion. This was like, wow. It was amazing.
So we just wanted to end with a few teaser slides. So, I think, our main goal is to show that participatory action creates new possibilities. And really, we're just getting started. And, in the disaster world, recovery timelines are super long. And the vital needs and infrastructures remain unreliable and unmet in communities, most often for long periods of time. And so really, we need to change the script because we're stuck in this, not only a disaster cycle, but we're stuck in our roles. And so to that end, Jim and I have formed a little startup called Collective Infrastructures, where we're creating various products, both digital, physical, as well as consulting services that really work to empower people on the ground and help people work as a collective, both within the aid world and then also with the communities. So this is just an example. We designed the little
In a
storm
minute.
station. We won't bore you in what these things are, but they're little modules that give people basic access to medical assistance, electricity, water, hand washing, and urinal services that are off the grid. So we built a few in Puerto Rico, hand in hand with the community. And, this just shows you an energy station on the left and a water station, drinking water station on the right. These are low cost with off-the-shelf materials that you can buy at any hardware store. Super low tech. And what came out of it was that kind of sense of community. And I think everyone kind of came together and worked with us to build this thing, and it created a sense of accomplishment and a sense of ownership for just simple infrastructure that could be used in the everyday, but also in times of disaster. Jim, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, that project is what got us together and hooked me in, and so I'm so glad that happened. Also, now that we're almost out of time, I wanted to announce I am also the co-chair of Cultivating Ensembles. And so we are having our conference July 24th through 26th. I'll paste something into the chat. And then the other announcement that I wanted to make is that Farzana and I are actually trying to leverage our institutional location so that if you are academics out there, we're trying to create an academic center. And so as we're building that, we may want to connect with folks who are not in our institution when we're making the case that such a center should exist. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. And thank you so much.
And just one thing, if you're not an academic
Yep.
and you're a community leader, or you are an active participant in a nonprofit that see challenges on the ground anywhere in the world, we'd love to hear from you, right? Because we're looking to partner with communities around the world, and we've already have a start to a great network of folks and to kind of build on some really great ideas that we have. So.
Yes, and thank you so much for having us at Performing the World. It's great so far, and we hope to see you again sometime soon.
Yes, please be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Really good.